liberal snowflake or whatever about my feelings. But then you, in the middle of your speech, I think this was hate speech, you made fun of transgenders. Well,
I made fun of one person who grabbed me by the back of the neck and threatened me with violence, to be fair.
I mean, yes, but also Caitlyn Jenner, and you seem to be making, You were clearly making jokes at the expense of transgender people. So my question is, where do you draw the line between being a mensch and clearly offending people? Like, where do you draw the line?
Okay, so for me, if I coldly and clearly state a fact and you're offended by the fact, that's not me being responsible for offending you. That's me saying a fact and you being offended. As far as me making jokes about Zoe Tur, my general rule is that if somebody grabs me by the back of the neck and threatens me with violence on national television, I have the right to make fun of them. That's just as when I was at University of Wisconsin, if people are going to chant at me and yell at me, then I'm not going to treat them with courtesy because they are not deserving of courtesy. Courtesy is something that you earn by being courteous.
Okay, fine. I understand that, but it just seems a little bit hypocritical to brag about the fact that you openly humiliated someone on national television while also telling people to be mentions. I just think that's a little.
Well, I mean, let's put it this way: my belief is in mutually assured destruction. So if you're going to, if you attempt to again do me physical harm on national TV, then I'm not going to treat you with a level of respect that you have not earned. I mean, I'm treating you with respect, and we disagree, right? Because you're courteous.
So my question is, can you just do me a favor and define the terms in your definition,
Sure.
White privilege, microaggression, and trigger warnings? Because it seems that we have very different definitions of it, and yours seem to be kind of one-dimensional and simplistic, which makes your arguments agreeable, yes, on the surface,
yes,
but not agreeable on the surface, yes, but not really anything more than basic.
Okay. Well, since you're already critiquing them, why don't you give me your definition? We can discuss that. That seems more productive.
No, actually I just want to hear yours because that's how your whole, I want to know what your argument is based upon, and your definitions are what matters here, not mine, so please continue.
Okay, so I'll give mine and then we can trade if you want. And we can have a full discussion with the author. So my definition of white privilege is that America was founded on racism, and that it is inherent in the Constitution of the United States and our legal system, and it is unremovable from the United States and our legal system. It is bound up in our economics, it's bound up in our intellectual system, it's bound up in all of the institutions that surround us. And therefore, individual failings are largely due, or group failings, if there's disparity between groups, group failings are due to these institutional biases that have long predated the people who are born today, as opposed to the fault or responsibility of the individual today. Do you find that deeply wrong or unfair?
I think that's very one-dimensional, but can you please go on to microaggression? No, I'm just curious. I don't want to.
Sure. You can label it whatever you want. I was hoping to get your definition also, so we can actually come to consensus if we could. I mean, that'd be more interesting to me. But if you want me just to define things, okay, dictionary time. Okay, So microaggressions, according to Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff in The Atlantic, are largely defined as implicit statements that we make that offend other people without even knowing it. And they're based subjectively. They're not based objectively. So I can say something to you, like if I ask you where you're from, right? You can take that as a microaggression, particularly if you're from a foreign country, because you may be thinking that I'm thinking that you are a foreigner, for example. And to me, subjectivity in interpretation is significantly less important or decent for a society in which we actually have to talk to each other than objective meanings of words and statements.
Personally, I do agree with that definition to an extent. The comment that you made about having microaggressions allow someone to put their hands on them or allow someone to act negatively or aggressively or physically, I do disagree with that because I think that's taking a jump away from what microaggressions actually mean.
So then what are microaggressions? So instead, why don't you just say, that offends me?
And which is perfectly fine, but I think that what microaggressions mean, you are taking it another step outside of what the common definition is, or at least the definition that I may use. I just think that we're
you're right that I'm extending the logic to what campuses actually do, namely punish people for microaggressions or take measures against them. So you may agree that something's a microaggression, there shouldn't be measures against it. I'm suggesting that we come to an agreement now, you and I, that the language of microaggressions ought to go away, and instead we'll just call them subjectively offensive statements. Because that's more accurate. Microaggression implies there's something objectively aggressive about what I am saying to you if I say something to you that you don't like.
Well, I don't want to take too much time.
You know, it's interesting, though, so I'm glad you're here.
I will step by that one because I just forget. Next one is trigger warnings.
Okay, so trigger warnings are, again, based on the idea that I'm going to say something to you that is, I mean, were you here? Yes.
Definition of it, because I think we have two different definitions of what all these terms.
The reason that I'm finding this conversation mildly unproductive is you're not giving me your definition so we can actually reach something here. Again, I'm happy to define things until the cows come home, but what I enjoy doing is actually figuring out, if you think I'm wrong, you tell me where I'm wrong, and then we can discuss where I'm wrong or not. That seems more productive to me. Wouldn't it be more productive to you? I mean, as opposed to me just saying.
Okay, so it would be more productive, but this is a lot. Oh, it's a large group of people, and I want to state.
We have a long line.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So thank you.
Again, folks, if you want to email me, if you want to email, my email address, if you want to have these discussions in more length, is bshapiro@dailywire.com. I'm always happy to have long conversations as time permits to do these things.
Thank you.
I just want to disagree with Lauren there. I feel a heavy amount of animosity towards you, but thank you for bringing this ignorance to our campus, because I think it's important when you hear people from different sides, and because of the First Amendment, I can say that, right?
Well, thank you.
But I do have a real question in there.
Your video, because there was no question mark at the end. This was going to be a real downer.
In your video where you debunk white privilege, you talk about how white privilege is a made-up term by privileged minorities. So I was wondering if you can elaborate on some of the privileges that you think minority groups have.
Okay, so in privileges in law, so when I say privilege, I'm actually going to talk about legal standing. Okay, so affirmative action is a privilege. Affirmative action is a privilege. Subprime mortgages designed to appeal to minority recipients without proper qualifications, that is a privilege. Right, those are a couple examples of privilege. Privilege would also be the police being told that they can't police in communities the same way they would in other communities because they don't understand the problems of minority communities. That's a privilege. By the way, these privileges are not helpful, but these are, as an overall matter, but it is certainly it's very difficult for me to see how it's not a privilege to get a lower score on the SAT than the Asian guy who's living in exactly the same circumstance. He gets penalized 50 points, you get 230 points on the SATs. That is definitionally a privilege. So there's one. Do you disagree?
Yeah, but I don't want to take up everyone's time, so I'm just going to let.
Do you think a distinction should be made between mainstream Muslim culture and radical Islamist terrorists?
Yes, of course. I mean, I think that there is a difference between Islam as a religion and radical Islam. However, I think that it is also a mistake to pretend that radical Islam is a tiny minority of Muslims. If you look at the viewpoints by Gallup and Pew polls worldwide, a large minority of Muslims believe very, very radical things. Not a large majority of American Muslims, by the way, a large majority of Muslims worldwide. A small minority of Muslims in the United States believe super radical things because many of them are westernized. But if you look at Afghanistan, 99% of people in Afghanistan believe in honor killing. Seriously, this was a Pew poll study. If you look at Iraq, it's the same sort of statistic. If you look at Pakistan, there's a huge number of people who back homicide bombings. So, I think that it's a mistake to pretend that the threat is less than it is. I think it's also a mistake to pretend that Islam as a whole does not have a bigger problem with terrorism than other religions, because statistically it obviously does. But obviously,
to come out transgender is horribly difficult. It is the most difficult thing you can do. I've been overseas. I've flown helicopter missions, surveillance missions. I've been shot, stabbed. Being brave is being yourself. And being transgender is about the bravest thing you can do. Does she deserve the award? Yes.
Why are we mainstreaming delusion?
It's not delusion.
Why would you call it delusion?
Because Caitlyn Jenner, I'll call him Caitlyn Jenner.
No,
because
it's her. You're not being polite to the pronouns.
Because
disrespectful.
Okay, forget about the disrespect. Facts don't care about your feelings. It turns out that every chromosome, every cell in Caitlyn Jenner's body is male, with the exception of some of his sperm cells. It turns out that his brain structure is male. It turns out that he still has all of his male appendages. How he feels on the inside is irrelevant to the question of his biological sex.
I don't agree with that. I'm not on that train. I'm not on that train. She wants to be called she. I'm going to call her she. I just have a problem with the message and the messenger.
So, well, I'm going to do two things. I want to reiterate what Zoe said, which is the bifurcation of the courage to come forward after a lifetime as a male and a certain kind of a male, versus did she deserve this award? Listen, the awards, what are award ceremonies except an opportunity to catch some eyes?
Especially the ESPN.
So, yeah. ESPN, well done, ABC. They did exactly what their job was, to attract eyes. They did it. That's what award ceremonies are for. But in terms of the science behind gender dysphoria, you're very familiar with that, Zoe.
Very familiar.
It's not about the chromosome. Excuse me, the chromosomes within our
both know
nuclei. Yeah, go ahead.
Chromosomes don't necessarily mean you're male or female.
Gender.
With gender,
gender
of course.
identity. Go ahead. No, so
especially, but even so, you have a thing like Klinefelter's syndrome. So you don't know what you're talking about. You're not educated on genetics.
Would you like to discuss the genetics? Or
well,
no.
no,
What
no.
are your genetics?
So I'd stay away from the genetics and back to the brain scans.
You cut that out now, or you'll go home in an ambulance.
Yeah, that seems mildly inappropriate for a political discussion.
No, I know. Well, but wait. To be fair, but to be fair, you're actually being kind of rude. And that's not fair.
I'm sorry, it's not rude to say that someone who is biologically a male is a male.
You just
someone who is biologically male is a male. Okay. So first of all, honest to God. Okay, guys, I'm sorry. I have to explain to you how semantics work. Like, really, I think this is important now. Okay. You're so boring. You're so boring. Okay, so let me explain to you something, okay? If you're gonna pick a chant like shame, who, me? If you're gonna pick a chant like shame, watch Game of Thrones first. The bad guys shout shame. You're not changing anybody's mind. All you're showing everybody is that your collective IQ, if it were channeled into electricity, might be able to toast a piece of bread lightly. Okay, so can we talk now, or are you going to keep shouting? Like, really, now's your chance to get it out. Let's hear your feelings. Come on. Just go for it. Or it's going to be like every 30 seconds, like the annoying microwave timer. Like, you got anything more? You got anything more? Okay, are we done? Thank you. All right. Social justice. Okay, if you guys are all going to come up here, can we at least have circle time or something? So, are you guys having a tough time seeing?
Safety! 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 When you talk about dismantling safe spaces, the very presence of that space on campus. The very presence of that space on this campus tells us you are not looking out for them. Their safety is not your concern. Safety! 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 Fuck white supremacy! This is our university! 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 Fuck white supremacy!
Okay, so can we talk now, or are you going to keep shouting? Like, really, now's your chance to get it out. Let's hear your feelings. Come on. Just go for it. Or it's going to be like every 30 seconds, like the annoying microwave timer. Like, you got anything more? You got anything more? Okay, are we done? Thank you. All right. Social justice. Now, normally I don't like to do this, but if we have any peace officers, this actually is now a disturbance that we would like to get past so that we can actually have a discussion. If you guys want to talk, we can talk. If you want to shout, get the hell out. So, social justice is an oxymoron. Okay, if a guilty man is acquitted because he's the right race, that is anti-justice. If an innocent man is convicted because he's the wrong race, that's anti-justice. Social justice, however, suggests that your group identity, your identity as a person, relieves you of individual responsibility to be a decent human being. So you get to interrupt lectures if you're the right race, or if you're the right gender, or the right sexual orientation. You get to do these things without punishment because, after all, that's in the nature of social justice, group justice. We don't hold you responsible for your individual actions. You get extra points in heaven because you were born with a certain skin color or sexual orientation. Today, all you hardcore leftists call yourselves social justice warriors, and you do this because you believe that individual justice is racist and sexist and bigoted and homophobic. Individual justice suggests that we each be held responsible for our actions, but SJWs think that's unfair because we're not just individuals, of course, we're members of groups. Now, before we go any further, decency, 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 decency. Question. Do you know me? Do I know you? Like, how do you know anything about me? Why am I a white supremacist? Because you guys are here shouting down people who are speaking. Really? Okay, last time. How what starts? How what starts? What are we even talking about? What is it? And why, if you have a question, why don't you just ask it? I'm happy to talk with you, but this is nonsensical. This doesn't help. What was that? Well, then tell your people to sit down. We're having a question-answer period. Well, then, who are they? If you want to have a conversation, let's have a conversation. This is not productive. This is whiny nonsense.
To protect free speech that is hate speech.
abortions, right?
Yes, I'm pro-life, yeah.
Okay, so then what would you advise that woman to do?
Okay, so first of all, I do appreciate that you created the saddest possible scenario for a living human. Is she also disabled? Let's really go whole hog, and she has breast cancer as well. So it's as long as we're creating imaginary victims. But you know, the answer is that doesn't actually change the calculus, meaning that obviously what happened to this person is an awful, awful, horrible thing, and as I said earlier, the person who raped her should be tracked down, captured, killed, or castrated. So that's number one. As far as the morality of abortion does not change based on need, right? So the fact that she's poor and needs an abortion doesn't change whether she was rich or needs an abortion or poor, because the abortion argument really comes down to, do you think this is a life or not? If you don't think it's a life, you can do whatever you want with it. If you think it's a life, you can't do anything with it. As far as what she does with the baby, that's up to her. You know, it's obviously going to be an obvious economic burden. I would think that there are a lot of people out there like me who would give charity in order to try and help out somebody who's obviously in that sort of situation. And there are charities that exist for people like this to try and help out. And if you know of this woman, tell me her name, and I'm happy to give her some money.
So I'm just wondering, because there is the health of the woman that's taken into question, and she doesn't have the money to have proper health care, or as well as the fact that if she's in college, there's a good chance that she won't be able to continue college.
Okay, the idea that what about the health of the mother? So my view on abortion, again, the morality of killing a baby does not change as long as the baby's not actually threatening the life of the mother. In the cases where the baby threatens the life of the mother, like, for example, you have a case where a woman has actual breast cancer and she needs chemotherapy, and she's pregnant, but the chemotherapy will abort the baby, which actually does happen, right? That is a case where the mother should, I think, be able to get the treatment. That's not the same thing as an abortion. So they're actually treating the mother for what she's got, and the byproduct of that is that the baby is terminated, the baby's killed, basically. I do think that it's important to know two things. One, the solution to something horrible happening is not another horrible thing happening in the killing of a baby, which I think is actually horrible. And two, it's really not good to take the marginal case and then use that to argue broad. So what people tend to do is they say, well, what about the girl who's raped? What about her abortion case? So now let me ask you, if the girl weren't raped and she just got pregnant, would you think that she should still have access to an abortion?
I do, because I think it's her body and I think it's her health.
Right, so you're giving me an exceptional case in order to prove a rule that you don't actually want to defend. So if you just come up and ask me, do I think a woman should have an abortion, then we could actually have an argument about, or a discussion about in what cases an abortion was appropriate. But you always, this is what people on the pro-choice side, the anti-life side, actually do. What they actually do is they take the marginal case, they take the raped, woman who has a severe disability, and they say, this is all abortions. That's not all abortions. Significantly less than 1% of all abortions are performed on women who have been raped. So if you want to talk about the epidemic of abortion in the country, over 1 million abortions performed a year in the United States, let's talk about the other 99% of cases. When you are willing to agree with me that the other 99% of cases are not cases where abortion should be necessary, then I'm willing to have a discussion with you about compromise. But I don't think that's what you want. I think that you're just using the exceptional case in order to try and guilt me into supporting a broad-based abortion platform. These are two separate issues. Sympathy for the woman and sympathy for, how about a little sympathy for the child? Okay, at any point does sympathy for the child come in here? You say I'm not compromising. I'm the only one in this conversation who's expressed the willingness to take money out of my own pocket and put it in somebody else's.
So have you donated to Planned Parenthood then?
What was that?
Have you donated to Planned Parenthood?
No, because they kill babies.
No, they don't.
They kill 300,000 unborn children a year. No, I don't donate to a baby genocidal organization. Permanently born in America.
Right. So,
and those aren't mine, those are the Brookings Institution. Yeah.
What would you advise to a young woman who's not married, who gets raped, but does not have access to an abortion as you believe in no abortions, right?
Yes, I'm pro-life, yeah.
Okay, so then what would you advise that woman to do?
Okay, so first of all, I do appreciate that you created the saddest possible scenario for a living human. Is she also disabled? let's really go whole hog, and she has breast cancer as well. So it's as long as we're creating imaginary victims. But you know, the answer is that doesn't actually change the calculus, meaning that obviously what happened to this person is an awful, awful, horrible thing, and as I said earlier, the person who raped her should be tracked down, captured, killed, or castrated. So that's number one. As far as the morality of abortion does not change based on need, right? So the fact that she's poor and needs an abortion doesn't change whether she was rich or needs an abortion or poor, because the abortion argument really comes down to, do you think this is a life or not? If you don't think it's a life, you can do whatever you want with it. If you think it's a life, you can't do anything with it. As far as what she does with the baby, that's up to her. You know, if she wants to keep the baby, it's obviously going to be an obvious economic burden. I would think that there are a lot of people out there like me who would give charity in order to try and help out somebody who's obviously in that sort of situation. And there are charities that exist for people like this to try and help out. And if you know of this woman, tell me her name, and I'm happy to give her some money. In terms of abortion, adoption is also another option. If this is a person who can't take care of the baby, putting it for adoption seems to be a better option for the baby than killing the baby. Yeah, it's okay. Let her follow up.
So I'm just wondering, because there is the health of the woman that's taken into question, and she doesn't have the money to have proper health care, or as well as the fact that if she's in college, there's a good chance that she won't be able to continue college.
Okay, so now you're adding more variables to the situation. But okay, so let's take each one of those variables at a time. But I'm going to have to cut off the continuing hypothetical after this before she ends up in penury at the end of Les Mis. But it's. Okay, the idea that what about the health of the mother? So my view on abortion, again, the morality of killing a baby does not change as long as the baby's not actually threatening the life of the mother. In the cases where the baby threatens the life of the mother, like for example, you have a case where a woman has actual breast cancer and she needs chemotherapy and she's pregnant, but the chemotherapy will abort the baby, which actually does happen, right? That is a case where the mother should, I think, be able to get the treatment. That's not the same thing as an abortion. So they're actually treating the mother for what she's got, and the byproduct of that is the baby is terminated, the baby's killed, basically. That's not the same thing morally. As far as, again, all I can say is restate that if this woman, you know, there's about as sympathetic a case as you can make, and I personally would step in to try and help someone like that, and I have a feeling a lot of people in this room would step in to try and help somebody like that. But you're also... I do think that it's important to know two things. One, the solution to something horrible happening is not another horrible thing happening in the killing of a baby, which I think is actually horrible. And two, it's really not good to take the marginal case and then use that to argue broad. So what people tend to do is they say, well, what about the girl who's raped? What about her abortion case? So now let me ask you, if the girl weren't raped and she just got pregnant, would you think that she should still have access to an abortion? Right, so you're giving me an exceptional case. So you're giving me an exceptional case in order to prove a rule that you don't actually want to defend. So if you just come up and ask me, do I think a woman should have an abortion, then we could actually have an argument about, or a discussion about in what cases an abortion was appropriate. But you always, this is what people on the pro-choice side, the anti-life side, actually do. What they actually do is they take the marginal case, they take the raped, woman who has a severe disability, and they say, this is all abortions. That's not all abortions. Significantly less than 1% of all abortions are performed on women who have been raped. So if you want to talk about the epidemic of abortion in the country, over 1 million abortions performed a year in the United States, let's talk about the other 99% of cases. When you are willing to agree with me that the other 99% of cases are not cases where abortion should be necessary, then I'm willing to have a discussion with you about compromise. But I don't think that's what you want. I think that you're just using the exceptional case in order to try and guilt me into supporting a broad-based abortion platform. No, I just... Sure.
So whether thinking the woman got pregnant because of rape, or if the woman is pregnant because she didn't have access to birth control, but even if she does...
let her ask the question. I want to hear the rest of the question.
All right. Or even if she didn't, she had access to birth control, she didn't use it. She got pregnant. How about she gets responsible? At one point, I'm getting interrupted by a room of white males.
Would it be better if they were all black? I'm just I'm confused.
The point is you're overlooking the woman in the situation.
Well, okay, guys. Okay. I'm not overlooking the woman in the situation. She had many choices. Okay, so now you're shifting the scenario. Okay, so now just to be clear, are we talking about the scenario with the rape, or are we talking about the other one? Okay, because no, we're not going to do every scenario because all these scenarios are different, and I want to discuss them specifically. So if we're going to talk about, the case where the woman is she doesn't have access to birth control, which is available at CVS for $32, you can get a bunch of condoms. Okay, it's really not expensive. If we're going to talk about the idea that a woman just was too lazy to use birth control, or she got pregnant because the birth control broke, I really do believe. Well, I mean, since the woman is probably going to bear the burden of pregnancy, both of them might bear the burden. I mean, just actually speaking. Okay, the man has a lot less cost there. She does bear the physical burden. I mean, you're the one calling pregnancy a physical burden, aren't you?
Yeah, I am, but I'm wondering so you're saying the man shouldn't have any responsibility?
No, I'm saying the man should marry her. You're the one saying the woman should stay single and then rely on the government. These are two separate issues. Sympathy for the woman and sympathy for... How about a little sympathy for the child? Okay, at any point does sympathy for the child come in here? You say I'm not compromising. I'm the only one in this conversation who's expressed the willingness to take money out of my own pocket and put it in somebody else's.
So have you donated to Planned Parenthood then?
What was that?
Have you donated to Planned Parenthood?
No, because they kill babies. They kill 300,000 unborn children a year. No, I don't donate to a baby genocidal organization. Killing babies and all the rest of it. But
political, and that is the definition of feminist.
Well, if you're going to use that definition, does that include killing babies or no?
That's a separate issue.
Well, it's